Welcome to the Flight Academy's video on standardized procedure for shooting an ILS. My name is John Fiskus, and in the cockpit we have flight instructor Chase Friesen. Also assisting us today is Mike Radomski. In this video we're going to demonstrate the standard procedure for shooting an ILS approach from a couple miles outside the outer marker all the way down to the decision altitude. We're going to discuss some of the common errors we see people make during the approach phase of an ILS. And since we're doing this in our full motion simulator, we'll be able to reposition the airplane basically anywhere we want on the approach at any time. So we'll be able to show you those mistakes, then reset, go back out, and do it the proper way. In order to see all of the screens, all of these 4 screens with the best resolution, I advise you to expand this video to fit your full screen. But it's been well understood in aviation for a long time, and in instrument flying in particular, that safety is really enhanced a lot by having a standardized way of doing things. All the procedures we're going to show you today can be found in the Cirrus Flight Operations Manual, and they are the standardized method. If you want a copy of that FOM, Flight Operations Manual, contact Cirrus Design, and they'll sell you one. They're pretty inexpensive, about $10 or so. In this demonstration, we're going to use the ILS to runway 13 right at Boeing Field, which is KBFI, Bravo Foxtrot, India. If you're following along with me, you might want to pause the video now and pull up a copy of the approach chart through AOPA or airnav.com. The airplane's configured right now for 100 knots with flaps at 50%, about 2 miles outside of NOLA, which is the outer marker for this approach. This is the spot where, in the FOM, it very clearly states that we want you to be at 100 knots, flaps at 50, stabilized. This is the definition of a stabilized approach. You don't need to do anything until you intercept the glide slope. One of the common errors we see is that people are way too fast at this point, and they're well over even 120 knots. They're unable to put the flaps down if they need to. They end up putting the flaps down partway down the glide slope, pulling the power out radically so that they can slow down while they're descending. And all things considered, this is a very sloppy and unstable way of doing an approach. If ATC asks you to be faster than 100 knots, you can comply depending on your capabilities. If you feel comfortable flying the approach faster, go ahead and do so. Just remember, you're going to have a much greater workload as a result of this. If you don't, I definitely recommend not doing it if you feel any inkling of discomfort. Tell ATC what you can do. If you can do 120 knots, you can do 110 knots. Tell them that. If you only want to do 100 knots, that's fine. And if they say they need you faster than that, volunteer to go outbound for another approach to follow the faster traffic behind you. It's much better to be safer, slower, and in a controlled environment than fast and uncomfortable. It's certainly not going to contribute to safety. So we're going to unpause the simulation here. Chase is going to demonstrate another common error that we see. So Cirrus 123, maintain 2,200 till established. You're cleared for the ILS, runway 13 right.
Maintain 2,200 till established, cleared for ILS 13 right, Cirrus 123.
So in this demonstration, Chase is going to show what happens. We see this happen pretty regularly in people. They don't want to descend on the glide slope until they pass the fix that is the outer marker. We see this most commonly when people are hand flying, and basically the gist of it, you can see it on the approach chart, is slightly outside of NOLA, you would intercept the glide slope about a half a mile outside. People who don't descend on the glide slope right away end up high above the glide slope when they pass the outer marker and have to dive down to pick up the glide slope. This is certainly not a good way to do this approach. It's unstable if you're diving for the glide slope. Here, about a half a mile outside NOLA was where glide slope intercept should have happened. Chase is demonstrating what happens if you don't descend. So he's still up here at 2,200, a tenth of a mile away from NOLA. Now passing NOLA, he's half scale deflected, and notice how he has to dive down, pitch the nose down pretty sharply to go capture that glide slope. See his descent rate is close to 1,000 feet per minute. to go get onto the glide slope. This is not stabilized. Having to go down and capture it. Takes quite a while to do that. Meanwhile, Chase is getting a frequency change to Boeing Tower, which hopefully he had dialed in earlier. He's getting, various other things happening. Maybe he's remembered to brief his passengers. He's doing his before landing flow check. Too much activity. So what I'm going to do now is take the airplane back outside of NOLA. And we've repositioned there about 1.5 miles outside of NOLA. Chase is going to do it the right way this time, where he captures the glide slope and descends. And again, you'll see this time that he does capture the glide slope about 0.5 mile outside of NOLA and starts down at that point. He does not wait until he passes NOLA. Now here at glide slope intercept, Chase has reduced the power, started down. He knows the power setting that he needs to reduce, to maintain 100 knots and on the glide slope. Everybody should know that for their airplane. It's going to be a little different for each Cirrus, but it's going to be within certain parameters. And in your specific airplane, it's going to be the same pretty much every time. Slight exceptions for density, altitude, weight, winds aloft might change it a little bit, but we're only talking a few percentage or 1 to 2 manifold pressure at most. On the way down the glide slope, another common error that we see is people don't know what their decision altitude is. If you start down, you should know what you're going to. They also need to know what their initial missed approach instructions are. If you don't know what those are, you've got problems. You want to be focused on your PFD and on flying the airplane at this point, not looking down at your lap or even over at the MFD, which has the charts up. Here at this point, Chase has intentionally maneuvered off the localizer to get it about a half scale off to our right. So we have the needle deflected about half to the right. And in this case, we're going to show you another common error. I see people do this pretty regularly, where they go to try to intercept a deviation like that off of the localizer, and they go too far. They take too large of a correction angle up to about 30 degrees, which Chase is turning for now. He's going to show you what happens. Probably everybody watching this who's got an instrument rating has seen themselves do this once. With that level of turn, the localizer is already centered and passing through the course. So Chase is now using the proper technique to go intercept it. He's going to make a maximum correction back to the left of about 10 degrees in heading. And he's going to limit his bank angles to keep them pretty shallow. See how shallow this intercept is towards the localizer? But it is coming in, and that's all we wanted. We want everything stable and slow. His eyes are in a whole lot of places right now, watching his airspeed, his glide slope, his localizer, distance, all these things Chase is paying attention to. With this technique, he comes in nice and slowly. There, now having intercepted the localizer and still on the glide slope right at 100 knots, Chase is doing a good job of stabilized ILS all the way down to our minimums for this approach of 283 feet. With any luck, he'll break out and be able to make a nice landing at Boeing. We won't show that part of this video though. We're going to end it right at the decision altitude here in another 80 feet, 100 feet, and tune in for our next video, which is going to be about going missed.